Hayes back up. Oh, my God!
Clash in Paris was meant to be another proud chapter in the reign of Roman Reigns, the tribal chief and the face of WWE. Fans packed the arena with chants and cheers, ready to see their champion prove once again why he has carried the company on his shoulders for years. His opponent, Bron Breakker, was no ordinary challenger. The young powerhouse, fueled by raw strength and an unshakable determination to make his mark, represented the new generation knocking at the door. The match itself was intense, filled with explosive counters, near falls, and the kind of drama only WWE can deliver. But just as Roman appeared to have weathered the storm, Breakker delivered a spear so brutal it didn't just end the match, it ended the night in tragedy. Roman crumpled instantly, clutching his ribs, his face twisted in agony. The crowd, which moments earlier had been roaring with excitement, fell into stunned silence. EMTs rushed into the ring as referees waved frantically for help. Jey Uso slid under the ropes, his face etched with fear as he dropped to his cousin's side. The tribal chief, who had stood tall against every challenger for years, was now lying broken on the mat in Paris. Jey Uso, loyalty beyond storylines. For all the twists, betrayals, and fractures in the Bloodline saga, one thread has never broken: Jey Uso's unwavering loyalty to Roman Reigns. Fans have watched Jey resent Roman's dominance, rage against him in matches that felt like family civil wars, and even swear he'd walk his own path away from his cousin's shadow. Yet when Roman's health was suddenly on the line in Paris, none of those years of bitterness mattered. In that harrowing moment after Bron Breakker's spear sent the tribal chief crashing down, Jey was the first man by Roman's side. He knelt in the ring, hands gripping Roman's tightly, shouting at the medics to hurry. The sight of Jey, eyes wide with fear, his usual bravado stripped away, was enough to remind even the most cynical fans that wrestling storylines pale in comparison to family bonds. Backstage cameras later captured Jey pacing the hospital corridors, unable to sit, his face pale, his words sharp with desperation as he pressed doctors for updates. Witnesses said he wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink, and refused to step outside for even a breath of fresh air until he had concrete news about his cousin's condition. For Jey Uso, this wasn't about protecting a storyline or defending the Bloodline's brand. It was about being there for the boy he grew up alongside on Samoan beaches, the cousin he shared locker rooms with as a child, the family member who carried the same Anoa'i pride stitched into his veins. That night in Paris reminded everyone, this was not just a feud. This was blood, loyalty, and love. CM Punk arrives in Paris. Hours later, as Jey kept vigil outside Roman's hospital room, the night took a turn no fan could have predicted. A black car rolled up outside the Paris hospital, and from it stepped a figure who had defined rebellion for a generation of wrestling fans, CM Punk. The man Roman once dismissed as yesterday's rebel, the man who had mocked the Bloodline and sparred with Jey Uso in bitter promos, was suddenly here. And what stunned the wrestling world even more was that Punk was not alone. Walking beside him was Jey Uso, both men grim-faced, their years of hostility seemingly dissolved in the glow of fluorescent hospital lights. Fans camped outside immediately pulled out their phones, capturing the surreal moment of Punk and Jey striding together through those hospital doors. Within minutes, the images raced across social media, and the disbelief was universal. These weren't allies. These were rivals whose history was etched with venom and grudges. Yet here they were, united by a common purpose, to stand with Roman in his darkest hour. There was no bravado, no theatrical flourish, no performance for cameras. Just two men walking silently, their rivalry set aside for something far bigger than titles or television ratings. Punk's decision to come wasn't about a storyline twist. It was about respect. He had clashed with Roman, insulted Jey, and rejected the Bloodline's dominance, but he knew too well what it meant to suffer in this industry. He had felt the toll of injury, of isolation, of moments when even legends are reduced to fragile human beings. When Roman fell, Punk showed up. A history of bad blood. To grasp the gravity of Punk's arrival in Paris, fans had to revisit the long history of hostility that bound these men together. CM Punk's rivalry with Roman Reigns began in the early 2000s, when Punk was at the height of his reign as WWE champion, and Roman was the muscle of the Shield, a young lion poised to take over the company. Punk mocked Roman relentlessly, calling him a corporate creation, a puppet molded by management to be the golden boy. Roman, bristling with confidence even then, fired back by branding Punk a bitter relic who clung to his past glories. Their matches were ferocious, their promos venomous, and the disdain between them often felt too raw to be scripted. Jey Uso's clashes with Punk came later, but were no less intense. When Punk returned to WWE in 2023, it was Jey, fiercely protective of the Bloodline's legacy, who stood nose to nose with him. Their exchanges burned with tension. Jey accused Punk of disrespecting Samoan heritage. Punk accused Jey of being nothing without Roman. Their matches were fireworks, Jey's high-flying grit colliding with Punk's technical cunning. And yet, beneath the bitterness, there lingered threads of respect. Roman, despite his barbs, respected Punk's ability to command crowds like few others. Punk, for all his mockery, admired Roman's relentless work ethic. Jey, though quick to hurl insults, recognized in Punk a fighter as stubborn as himself. Those hidden truths, buried beneath years of conflict, laid the foundation for what unfolded in Paris. Inside the hospital room, witnesses and nurses later described the hospital reunion as something that transcended wrestling. Roman Reigns lay in a bed, his chest wrapped, his body bruised and battered, but his eyes alert. Jey was already there, seated beside him, gripping his cousin's hand like he had in the ring, refusing to let go. Then the door opened, and Punk stepped in. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Roman's lips curled into the faintest smile, a flicker of vulnerability rarely glimpsed in the tribal chief. Punk pulled up a chair, said little, and simply sat. His presence alone spoke volumes. For more than an hour, the three men talked quietly. Sources close to them say the conversation wasn't about championships or rivalries, but about families, children, injuries, and the scars that come from decades in the business. Nurses described moments of soft laughter breaking the tension, like old friends remembering shared struggles rather than rivals patching wounds. And then came the moment that would break the internet. Punk, breaking the silence, pulled out his phone. He leaned close, with Jey on the other side, Roman propped up between them in his hospital bed. The faintest smiles crossed their faces as Punk snapped the photo. Minutes later, he posted it online with a simple caption. "Family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters most." The viral aftershock. The photo spread like wildfire. Within minutes, it had racked up millions of likes, shares, and retweets. Fans called it the most human moment in WWE history. Hashtags like #ReignsStrong, #WWE and #Punk and USO trended worldwide. Wrestling podcasts lit up with emotional reactions. Forums that had spent years debating winners and losers were suddenly filled with fans sharing stories of their own families, loyalty, and bonds that carried them through pain. Merchandise teams capitalized immediately, releasing shirts with Punk's caption that sold out in record time. But beyond the sales and hashtags, what struck fans was how real it felt. For once, there was no kayfabe, no storyline twist to decode. This was reality peeking through the curtain. Fans were reminded that beneath the costumes, the promos, and the characters were people, men who bleed, suffer, and love just like anyone else. The image blurred the line between fiction and truth, showing the world the heart behind the spectacle. What they talked about. Though the full details of their hospital conversation remain private, whispers from those close to the trio painted a picture of vulnerability and honesty. Roman, still in pain, reportedly shared fears about being sidelined for too long, worried about his children and the possibility of missing milestones at home while healing. Jey tried to lighten the mood, telling stories from their Samoan childhood, tales of training on beaches, of playful scraps, of lessons from elders. Roman laughed through the pain, reminded of who he was before the spotlight. Punk, never one to sugarcoat, spoke about the injuries that haunted him, the loneliness of long tours, the doubts that had crept into his mind about whether returning had been worth it. It was raw, unfiltered, human. Nurses described it as a scene where masks fell away and only 3 men remained, bonded by respect, struggle, and survival. For once there were no insults, no egos, just connection, reactions from the wrestling world. When the photo hit the internet, the wrestling community responded with a wave of admiration and reflection. Jon Moxley, Punk's longtime friend and Roman's former Shield brother, called it a wake-up call, adding, "Wrestling will break your body, but moments like this remind you what it's really about. Respect." Becky Lynch praised the vulnerability, saying, "We're not just characters, we're people." And it's okay to show that Seth Rollins, usually Punk's fiercest critic, simply tweeted, "Respect." Triple H, speaking rarely from the heart, wrote, "This is why I love this business. It's bigger than the ring legends and newcomers alike shared the image, using it as a reminder that while rivalries sell tickets, relationships build legacies. The moment belonged to Roman, Jey, and Punk, but it became a mirror for the entire industry. The bigger question: what's next? As moving as the hospital reunion was, it left fans asking what it meant for the future. Would Roman, Jey, and Punk form a new alliance when Roman returned? Could this unexpected bond become the foundation of a faction to stand against Bron Breakker, whose spear had triggered it all? Or was this simply a fleeting moment of humanity, destined to live outside the canon of storylines? Breakker's silence in the weeks since Paris has only fueled speculation. Some believe he respects the unity he inadvertently sparked. Others suspect he is planning another shocking move. Roman's recovery is expected to have him back by WrestleMania, and fans are already buzzing with dream scenarios. Will his comeback carry vengeance, unity, or both? The hospital photo has become a symbol of compassion, but in the world of WWE, symbols often transform into storylines. A cultural shift in wrestling beyond kayfabe, the Paris reunion has sparked a cultural shift in wrestling. For decades, vulnerability was rarely shown by top stars. The image of Punk, Jey, and Roman changed that overnight. It proved that true strength isn't always in dominance. It can be in honesty, in compassion, in showing up when it matters. Trainers at the Performance Center reportedly pointed to the photo during classes, urging young talents to support one another, to care for the people behind the characters. Fans, too, began to talk differently. For once, they weren't just discussing booking decisions or match outcomes. They were reflecting on loyalty, resilience, and humanity. Wrestling has always blurred the line between reality and fiction, but Punk, Jey, and Roman reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful moments come when reality shines through. Conclusion: a moment that will live forever. The WWE Universe thrives on betrayal, drama, and jaw-dropping twists. Yet some of the most unforgettable moments are the ones that happen away from the ring. CM Punk and Jey Uso visiting Roman Reigns in that Paris hospital wasn't about championships, storylines, or rivalries. It was about family, loyalty, and respect. It was about showing up when it mattered most. That grainy selfie became more than a viral post. It became a symbol of compassion in a business built on conflict. Fans may debate whether the moment leads to a new alliance or fades into legend, but its legacy is already secure. It was real. It was raw. It was unforgettable. And it proved that sometimes the most powerful moves in wrestling aren't performed under bright lights before thousands of fans, but in the quiet corners of a hospital room where rivals become allies and family extends far beyond blood.